Airlines Confidential with Scott McCartney is made possible with support from Pratt & Whitney, committed to working smarter, cleaner, and greener today for a more sustainable tomorrow. PrattWhitney.com. Infinity Flight, the leader in Cadet Academy flight training programs. InfinityFlight.com. Ontario International Airport in Southern California. SoCal So Easy. And by Cirium, the world's most trusted source of aviation analytics, Cirium.com. We also welcome your business's support. Contact us at airlinesconfidential.com.
Welcome to Airlines Confidential. I'm Scott McCartney, and I'm excited to be back in school this week. We're going to go to school. This is going to be a different show. I think a very exciting show, and I think a very important show. I'm here with Doug Parker, and Doug is going to lead me through a really interesting lesson, tutorial on airline revenue and pricing. There has been such a transformation in the industry, and Doug can explain this better than anyone. So I think we're going to have some fun with this. We don't really know, in all honesty, where this is going.
No, we don't.
But we're going to give it a try. So welcome back, Doug.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it, and I'm hoping you haven't oversold this already. But anyway, I agree with what you said. I think there's been, and I find, as you and I have conversations, or as I listen to some of your other guests, or that a lot of what we talk about, I try to explain as well. That's this transformation that happened in pricing, but it's hard. Anyway, I feel like sometimes I'm even talking a different language because if you don't walk through some of this history and live through what someone who's lived this like you have or like I have, it's kind of hard. So anyway, what I thought and what we talked about is let's go through and try to put together for lack of a better term, a class on this.
Right.
So here we go. So,
and it's fascinating too. I mean, it really is. This gets into human psychology. It gets into all kinds of business strategy. It gets into why the airline is what it is today, and why some airlines are doing well and some airlines are struggling. So I think it's going to be really great. Okay. Pricing school is now open. Let me turn it over to you and take us through how airlines price tickets, but also how this has all changed, how the science has changed, and what that's done not only for the industry financially, but also for how we travel.
All right. Well, thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. Look, the genesis of this in my mind, it was, when the last time I was on the podcast with you, you had me and Richard Anderson on to talk to each other. And at one point you asked us both what the most transformative event in the airline business had been since deregulation or something like that. And both of us gave you the same answer: consolidation, which is probably no surprise to you or most of your listeners. I think that's the right answer. But if you ask me what second is on that list, I think it might be surprising. I think the second most transformative event in the airline business since deregulation is the development of basic economy pricing and the sell-up pricing that came with it.
Yeah.
It's that big a deal.
Huh.
I think virtually all the major changes that have taken place in our industry over the past decade have that basic economy pricing structure as their foundation. That includes the struggles of the LCCs, the focus on product at the larger airlines, the increase in labor costs, changes in frequent flyer programs, all those things, I think, have their basis in the establishment of basic economy pricing structure. It's that big a deal.
That's interesting in itself. Such an important point, because I think we think of basic economy just as a pricing strategy, pricing gimmick to address low-cost carriers, or just to find a way to match prices. That's all.
Exactly. I agree. And again, I think in order for us to understand, and for me to be able to explain this, we had to go through some of that history to do it. So I think that's why we need to do some of this. Yeah. I also think it's a fundamental long-term shift. That hasn't just had ramifications for the last 10 years. It's going to have ramifications for the future. Now, to cut to the chase, I think those ramifications are positive. for the long-term health and stability of our business and better for consumers. There's nothing to worry about here. But again, as we talk about trying to, as much of what you do on this show, working with listeners and help understand, what's going on in the business we all love and what might happen in the future. I think understanding this is really important to answering a lot of those questions. So I thought it might be fun for you and I to work through this together. And if we do it right, I think we'll be able to provide some insight into all sorts of questions that your listeners hopefully will find of interest. Questions like, how come more room in coach was a strategic failure, but products like Premium Economy and Main Cabin Extra are now being deemed rousing successes?
Yeah.
We'll come back to these, but I want to throw them out here at the start as things that hopefully we can come back to. If we do this right, we can answer. Second, why are the same executives who once argued against product enhancements in the airline business suddenly product advocates?
Yeah.
Have they changed?
Yeah.
Or has something else changed? What's happened to the spill carrier model? What's the future of the ULCC model? What benefits should frequent flyers expect going forward? How will the product models of the big three compare to each other in the future? I think we can answer all this, or at least to my satisfaction, by understanding what's happened with pricing.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the goal. Now, when you and I first exchanged notes about this, I know I told you I wanted to act as though I was teaching a class. And for the purpose of this podcast, you'd be my student. I started laying out some notes.
Always happy to be your student.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I started laying out some notes, and I quickly realized how stupid that was.
No,
it really is. So first, I've never prepared a lesson for a class in my life, and you're a professor at Duke. Second, for this to work as I think it should, I need to do a pretty basic building blocks, airline revenue management 101 kind of course. And you're at least a graduate PhD assistant in airline revenue management. So you can't be my student because you already know all the answers.
No, not.
So anyway, so let's try this instead. I'm going to pretend to be an aspiring professor who's working on a 101 level course, and you're going to help me by being the seasoned professor, pointing out things that may not make sense to an entry level student.
All right.
So basically, you're going to play dumb and help me build the class. All right. But we also need you to be your normal, inquisitive, challenging self at any point, which I know you will be, because that'll be the best feedback. All right.
And also know that I'm going to steal all of this for my class at the University of Colorado in the aviation MBA program.
Okay, you probably could have done it much better than I'm going to, but nonetheless, fair enough. Steal away. And actually, before we get started, I probably should I need to thank two people who helped me a little bit with some of this history. Maya Liebman, who you know well because one of your other guest hosts, and a guy named Don Casey, who ran pricing and yield management at American when I was there. He was a great guy and who helped me with some of the history. So anyway, 2 points though before I get started. Disclaimers that I need to make. First, while I love airline revenue management concepts, and I think I understand them better than most, I never worked in revenue management directly. And I am not an expert in the details. That's why I had to call Maya and Don, for example. So I imagine I'll inaccurately represent some history or some specifics here, and many of your listeners are going to know more specifics than I do. But the point of this lesson is not the detailed history and specifics. It's about the evolution of revenue management at a high conceptual level, okay? And how that evolution has changed airline business models. But if you happen to get some feedback later about how I misstated the precise history or left something important out, I apologize in advance. I will stipulate. They're likely right, and I'm likely mistaken. But I'll also suggest it probably doesn't matter in regard to the conclusions that you and I are going to talk about.
Yeah.
Second, some of what I'm going to say is going to be susceptible to being pulled in snippets to make it sound as though airlines are greedy price gougers. It's really hard to talk about maximizing revenue without sounding somewhat unfriendly toward consumers. That's why airline executives don't generally like to talk about it in detail like we're going to talk about.
That's a really interesting point, and it always fascinates me because overall, airline prices have continued to decline, inflation adjusted, right? So as good as they are at maximizing pricing, the prices keep going down, and so for consumers, travel is really a better and better bargain. If they were, I always say, if they were price gouging, they're pretty poor at it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So thanks. I mean, and you're always good about that. But again, others sometimes aren't. and
no,
so I just
yeah.
Go ahead.
And I think the other part of that is this has always been a low margin business. And airlines have always struggled to make money. Even when it was a regulated industry, they struggled to meet the prescribed profit level. And so I think it's important to, I would get in fights with people at the Wall Street Journal in the years when airlines were going bankrupt and losing money and all, and saying they have to make money. It's to the traveler's benefit that they make money, because then you can buy new airplanes, you can provide good service, and so in a low margin business, I just think consumers need to remember that, and travelers, and I think, road warriors understand this. Airlines need to make money. That's not a bad thing.
Thanks. You've said it all perfectly. That's again. But I'm just modestly concerned that, again, some of what I'm saying can be pulled out in snippets. And somebody can say, look, Parker just said the quiet part out loud.
Yeah.
And that's, anyway, what the context I'm going to keep trying to bring it back to, and you've already done it, is, this isn't about price gouging. This is about trying to maximize revenues in a really low margin business.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's important. People are, that's their jobs to go figure out how to do that. And in all my years in the business, I never witnessed anything resembling price gouging, for God's sakes. And as you said, if we're doing it, we're really bad at it.
Yeah.
But anyway, if all that's insufficient, know that what I'm saying here is entirely my perspective. Individual airlines might disagree with my perspective on this, or certainly wouldn't say it the way I might be saying it here. And again, they might be right. But look, with those two disclaimers, let's go. Professor. So, look, we need to start by describing what revenue management is, and I'll fall into calling it RM at times. But revenue management, in short, is pricing and yield management. We'll talk a little more about those two functions, but the essence of what those functions are trying to do is maximize the total revenue collected on each and every flight, flown out each and every day. That's their job, and the people that are good at it are worth their weight in gold. And it's kind of an analytical group. It's almost like the quant jocks at an investment bank. It's you throw them some food and let them do their puzzles and work on this stuff. And the ones that are really good at it, like I say, just can make a huge difference. People like Ben Baldanza were really good at this.
Yeah.
Scott Kirby, fantastic at it. Glenn Howenstein, fantastic at it. People that most people won't know, and I don't know them all. But people like Don Casey, who I talked about, and Scott Chandler at American, I know those. They're just, it's a different kind of function, and it's about and people that really enjoy doing it and maximizing the revenue on each and every single flight and figuring out how to do that is a really valuable part of the airline business. So that's what we're going to be talking about. That's what I'm going to be talking about a good bit. And just know that's what those individuals and those functions are trying to do. And the importance of this function is impossible to overstate. The reason those individuals and those groups are so important is because it's so important to an airline. So, think about a little bit what you just talked about. In really good years, airlines make 10% pre-tax profit margins.
Sure.
10% of revenues fall to the bottom line. But what that means is if a $50 billion airline like American, Delta, or United can just get its existing customers, they don't need a steal share, just get your existing customers to pay 1% more, instead of paying $500, pay me $505.
Yeah.
Just 1% more. You're going to get one that falls to the bottom line. It's your existing customers. You're not going to be, you just need to figure out a way to get them to be paying 1% higher. That's 1% profit margin. You can't find that stuff in where 10% is the best year you're going to have. Getting 1 point of margin is just enormous in our business. So these types of revenue management in groups can do those things. Alternatively, try to go find $500 million of cost savings at an airline without reducing capacity, which is going to reduce your revenues.
Right.
You can't do it. Airline costs are largely capacity driven. Their salaries, their benefits, their fuel price, their maintenance costs, their aircraft rents. I am not suggesting cost control at airlines isn't important,
right?
Particularly because somebody who came up through finance,
right?
I know it's important, But it just has far less leverage than even tweaks in revenue management, which is why this is so important.
Interesting.
The other point I should make right now is, go ahead. Do you have a question?
Yeah, no, I just think that's a really important point because, we sometimes think of, they're just being cheap or whatever. And there may be certainly examples of that. But the point is revenue is so much more important or as a lever you can pull.
It's where all the leverage is.
Yeah.
So the other thing I mentioned at this point is scheduling, which is also incredibly important to airline profitability and works closely with revenue management. But we're not going to get into scheduling in this lesson.
Okay.
We're going to assume the scheduling department's top-notch.
Okay.
And they've optimized the schedule to maximize the profit-generating capability of our airline.
Okay.
All right? And now it's up to revenue management to take that schedule and go maximize the revenue generated on those scheduled flights.
Right.
Okay, so with all that, that is building block number one, what you just said. Revenue management, maximizing the revenue on each and every flight is crucial to airline profitability, and very small improvements or mistakes can have enormous implications on profitability. Building block two is airlines have very large disparities amongst their customers as to what they're willing to pay. Very large. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because I think everyone gets it. But some airline customers are very price sensitive, or what we call as price elastic. They just want to get from point A to point B as cheaply as possible with little regard for anything else. And some customers are price inelastic. They care much more about schedule than price. They're willing to pay large sums just to get there more efficiently than some other routing.
Yeah.
And I don't know of any other business where this disparity is so large. So going back to building block number one, where small changes can make big differences, small shifts in either direction along this spectrum of price elasticity can have really large impacts on profitability. So I think, sometimes when consumers look and think, God, what are they trying to do here? And it just seems like they're, it may seem petty or it may seem so confusing. Why are they doing it? It's all about really trying to move it doesn't take much. And if we can figure out a way, not necessarily to get that, in my example, the $500 customer to pay $505, but to get one more $600 customer on the plane in lieu of a $400 customer, those types of things can have the exact same effect.
Yeah.
And that's what is going on all the time here because it's just so important. There's so much disparity in what people are willing to pay. Getting those who are willing to pay more onto your airplane is really, really valuable. And
it's not just a question of income of the particular customer, because that customer who's willing one day to pay $600 for the ticket, another trip may only be willing to pay $300.
Precisely. The exact same person.
The exact same person, right.
Depending on who's paying. In the first example, their company might be paying. In the second example, it might be themselves.
Well, in my experience, depending on totally who's paying.
Well, it might be sometimes you really have to get somewhere even when you're paying.
Yeah, no, that's very true.
But in general, yes. We'll get to that. In general, it depends on who's paying.
Yes.
Okay, so all right, and now then our third building block, and then we'll start with building blocks, is the airline schedule drives something we call natural share. Natural share is a term airlines use a lot internally. It's not kind of scientifically developed, but I shouldn't really say it that way. It's just not particularly precise. But it represents how much share an airline should expect to generate on any given route, given the customer demand and the competitive options.
So is this, I got 70% of the seats, I should get 70% of the share kind of thing?
Kind of stuff, exactly. Yeah. But it's much more detailed than that. Yeah. I mean, they had this, if we were doing scheduling, we'd spend a lot of time on this. We're not doing scheduling, but it's really important to think about versus revenue management because, what I can tell you is if any airline, if they add a new route, they know pretty well how many customers are going to show up on that routing, as soon as it goes into the schedule.
Yeah.
Because they know on that routing how many customers are traveling per day each way, not just on that route, but on all the connecting routes that now makes better. And it's rarely about generating more customers. It's going to shift share from others just because now it's a better routing. That type of thing is, again, that's kind of your natural share. If I go out a flight based upon where we are, and there are things like S-curve and your 70% example, you should get more than 70%,
right?
Because you have such scale. But nonetheless, but yes, thank you. That's what it is. And that's what we talk about as natural share. Again, not precise, based on tons of data, but it's important in this conversation because that's what revenue management, revenue management can't do much about that. That's what scheduling goes and builds, and you build your natural share. Revenue management is looking and say, okay, this is my natural share. What can I do to maximize the revenue on the airplane, given that I know that's what I should be getting in terms of revenue share?
Right. And let me just add, so some of that natural share, you know how many people in a market are members of your frequent flyer program or that kind of thing. How many people have your credit card? And that would be part of a natural share
absolutely
calculation.
Yeah, adding a flight from Dallas to El Paso is going to have dramatically different kind of natural share for American Airlines than El Paso to Atlanta. But anyway, that gets done, and that's kind of what you're trying to compare yourself against as revenue management. So at this point, I'm going to pause and give you a query that to students in this class that I might pose if for this class we're creating.
Yes.
So you're in that world, and you as a revenue manager, knowing what you're doing, you have three things you now know. What you're doing is really important, so you need to do it well. 2, there's a major disparity in what your groups of customers are willing to pay. And 3, you're being measured by how you perform versus what is believed to be the natural share of revenue you should collect on these markets you're working on.
Yeah.
How would you best go about maximizing the revenue on every flight in the schedule? What are the things you might do? No.
Okay.
It's a classic 101 student.
Once upon a time, I lived next door to an American Airlines pilot who said, all they need to do is just raise fares. Just raise fares. They can pay us. And, we all know just raising fares isn't going to do it, right?
Okay, but you're a 101 student. You absolutely would say that.
Yeah.
I'm going to raise fares.
Yeah. And then,
I'm going to say,
Yeah,
anyway,
because then you're going to lose customers, right? And part of that, getting $5 out of the $5 more dollars. At the same time, if I get 1 or 2 more people on the airplane, then I'm going to maybe turn that flight profitable, right?
So let me, as the professor, kindly answer your question. That student's idea, which is that's a great idea. However.
Yeah.
It doesn't tend to work in our business.
Yeah.
Because 20 to 25% is a number maybe right by airlines, but when I was at American and prior airlines, the number I was always told by our team was if we don't match the lowest fare in the market, 20 to 25% of our revenues are going to go away.
Right.
These price sensitive customers matter no matter who you are.
Right.
And if we just raise our fares and they aren't matched, the revenue managers, just cost me 25%, not 1%,
right.
25% of my revenue. You just can't do it. You have to have a price in the market that matches for that reason. So anyway, Good idea, but that's hard to do.
Right. So if I'm doing it, I don't want to manage for the cheap ticket. I want to manage for the expensive ticket, right?
There you go.
So and that's kind of inside out or half-assed backwards, right? So I've got to save some seats. I could sell every seat on the airplane for $50, right? And have 100% load factor.
You're not going to get your natural share.
And right, I'm not going to get my natural share. But I could also screw up by saying, hey, everybody pays $2,000. And then the airplane goes out empty. So I got to find a way to charge my price insensitive customers an appropriate price. And the old airline thing was the bakery, right? Yeah. The first loaf of bread is cheap. The last loaf of bread you got, somebody's going to pay you a lot of money for that because it's the last loaf of bread. And that was the theory with the seat, right? I want to hold back empty seats for that walk-up fare. And if I've got good data on historically how many people show up or whatever, that's what I want to manage for. So I'm going to sell a few seats. I'm going to match a few prices, right? But I'm only going to do that on a limited basis because I want to hold back seats for higher fares.
Yeah, you're a beyond a 101 student. But thank you. Of course that's right. The other thing I think students would say is, well, if I want some of those higher paying customers, I should give them a product. I should improve the product of my that's on the airplane. And in the rules of this, you're allowed to in revenue management. If you think putting caviar in coach is going to get you more of those high, you're perfectly okay to say that's my idea. But all you got to do is just say, I'm going to cover that with the cost of the caviar.
Yeah, when Herb gave away a liquor bottle to everybody. Yeah. No, but the old airline adage was it's a different product because you're buying it a day before rather than 30 days before.
Yeah, I know.
I don't think anybody really believed that.
Right, and we'll get into some of that.
But that, yeah.
Yeah, so again, you're too good a student. But
No.
I think if we were doing this with the one-on-one class, we'd end up with a list of items, and they'd come out in two broad ways. One, you can shift share from your competitors. Figure out a way to get those customers that are willing to pay more to fly your airline to be on you more than your competitors.
And so
shift. A better
right, frequent flyer mile bonus. What are you talking
more
about?
room and coach.
More, okay.
Those kinds of things.
Okay.
I'm going to put a better product on my plane that's going to get those kind of customers who tend to be business customers onto my airplane versus others.
Right. That was the whole more room and coach theory.
Exactly.
We give them more leg room, we will take customers away from other airlines.
Right. So that's one way, shifting share. The other way, I think, if we worked through all this, is where you were going, which is to optimize the revenue of your airline's natural share. That is, figure out a way to get everyone on your airplane to pay something close to what they're willing to pay. And now to get into that, we'll get into that. But first, on to share shift. You've already gotten there. But in general, and I stress general because I know some of our listeners will disagree with this, sustainable share shift in the airline business is really difficult in our business. To shift what is your natural share because of your schedule off of your airline onto another airline based on their schedule in a sustainable way is really, really hard to do.
So that's really an interesting point because I always think of people as creatures of habit, right? Once they get locked into, hey, I like flying this airline or whatever, it's hard to get them to change. On the other hand, what you always hear in the airline business is people will fly somebody else for $5 or $3.
Okay, I'm sorry. Share shift on price, really easy.
Okay.
That's the biggest way, again.
Yeah.
But you don't want to do that as a revenue management person. You don't want to lower your fares
right.
to try and shift share, because all that's going to happen is the other airline's going to lower their fares because they can't allow it either. And all that happens is a race to the bottom.
Yeah.
But you're right, absolutely. The biggest way to shift share is price. That's the biggest share. Is the lowest fare will indeed move price. And we'll get into that later. That's what happens later on. But anyway, in general, shifting share other than price is really, really hard, primarily because it's so expensive to lose premium customers. So if you do this caviar and coach idea, and it works, everyone's going to put caviar and coach because they have to.
Right.
Because they can't afford to lose those premium customers. So the result of that is we now all have caviar and coach. We've raised our cost structure, but we're back to our natural share. Mm-hmm. And that has happened. And again, back when Wi-Fi was put on, I know, Scott Kirby at the time worked with us, and he got some grief. He still gets some grief, I see at times. He said, Wi-Fi was something we shouldn't put in the airplanes, and all it's going to do is raise our cost. And it was something like that. And in fairness to Scott, I shouldn't try and remember exactly what he said, but it was something like that. And he was right about that product. It sounds so customer unfriendly to say, we shouldn't go put this product. And I don't know if he said we shouldn't. But the point was, we're all going to put this on our airplane.
Yeah.
Because if it moves share, it's important. Customers care about it. If an airline doesn't have Wi-Fi, they're not going to fly them. So we have to have it.
Right.
But it costs more than we earn from it. And we're all going to need to have it on, and we're all going to go back to our natural share. And again, this is back in 2009 or something when we're all struggling. So that comment, I think was accurate at the time. Sounds strange now, but that's the world of trying. That's the point was his point, and it would have been God, I might have said it for God's sake. Whoever said it. The point was it's really hard to move. It's really hard to move share in our business, certainly at that time. With enhancements to the product, because if you do, it's so expensive to the airline who lost the share, they're going to match the product.
Yeah.
Fair enough? Okay.
Fair enough.
So that's share shift.
And there's no magic answer to that. No magic bullet for
no, other than just it's really hard. So if you're a student, and that's your idea, I'm just going to tell you.
Right.
be prepared. It's been tried. It's really, really difficult to move for your natural share.
Yeah.
Caveat here, you can lose it.
Right.
American Airlines has proven that over the last couple of years. You can make mistakes that allow you to lose your natural share, and getting it back's really hard. And we can talk more about that.
Yeah.
But that's a self-inflicted wound. Actually figuring out a way to steal someone else's share is, like I said, really, really hard to do.
Yeah.
So that gets us to the second part the second idea we had on how to do that, and that's to optimize the revenue of your natural share. So to help us understand that second...
And let me just throw in, because we talked about it before, Richard Anderson proved dependability can shift share, right? Reliability. I think Delta, by reducing cancellations, running on time, they did get more business travelers gravitating to them in competitive markets like New York.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue that point. I think it's probably accurate. I don't know how much it did. And anyway, but yes.
Yeah.
But again, that's got to be a sustainable, okay, that's really hard. That takes a lot of work to come up with a product enhancement that can't be matched quickly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's the difference there.
Okay.
If you get there, it's like, the other airlines can't immediately replicate that.
Right.
But what's happening is they're working on it now.
Yeah.
To the extent that has moved share, look at how much is being invested in the other airlines and improving their operations for that same reason.
Right.
But you're right. Good answer. Okay. Now, to help us understand the second means by which airlines can maximize the revenues on any given flight, I want to pose you a question I got when I was a freshman in Micro-Econ 101 at Albion College.
Okay.
And I still remember it. It had an impact on me back then. I still think about it. So anyway, and no, this was, what was it, 1981. So this example's dated, but the theory is what matters. So the problem went like this. The problem goes like this. A hardware store advertises new lawnmowers at $150 each, but they'll give a discount of $25 to anyone that brings in a used lawnmower for trade-in. The lawnmowers that are traded in are promptly pushed out the back door and thrown away.
Yeah.
Why does the hardware store offer this discount for something they throw away? And what is that pricing model called?
I'm not sure what it's called, but you're essentially trying to make the consumer feel good about the purchase, right? You're giving them a discount as a way to get them in the door. I don't know. To me, it's not unlike Walmart got in trouble in different places for selling milk at 3 cents a gallon or something, and they were willing to take the milk was the loss leader to get them in the door. The lawnmower, I don't know. Is it you're willing to give up that bit of profit margin to make the sale?
Okay, close. What the answer to this is it's discriminatory pricing. The individual that owns a lawnmower, irrespective of what shape it's in, is less likely to go buy your $150 lawnmower than someone who doesn't own a lawnmower and is in the lawnmower market.
Oh, okay.
All right?
Yeah, right.
So that individual who doesn't have a lawnmower at all, there's flaws in this, of course. You might be selling, the guy may have a total piece of junk and has to have a new lawnmower. But in general,
right,
and you have to be general here, the individual who owns a lawnmower isn't, says, oh, my lawnmower's working, it's fine, I wish I had a new one. But
right,
they see the ads, they're going to give me $25 for this thing?
Yeah.
No deal. But that's how the hardware store maximizes their revenues. If they could either charge everyone $125, but it probably still wouldn't work. But instead,
and may not get the attention of the guy who owns the lawnmower.
But the $150 is a fair price and one that that person's willing to pay.
Yeah.
But some others may not. So anyway, that's the answer to the question. It's discriminatory pricing.
Yeah.
And it's discriminating based upon whether you own a lawnmower or you don't.
Yeah.
So as it relates to discriminatory pricing, the airlines, because of this enormous leverage and the huge price disparity amongst our customers, have been working on refining and perfecting price discrimination ever since deregulation. It's the primary means for revenue management to maximize airline revenue. It is, as I mentioned before, why airline pricing can seem so convoluted to consumers. It's not about shifting share. nearly as much it is about getting your natural share of customers to pay what they're willing to pay.
Okay.
You with me?
Yeah.
This is really important.
So in some cases, offering a sale will motivate somebody to buy an airline ticket who might not otherwise buy an airline ticket. That's the lawnmower. For some of your customers, they got to go.
Right.
So it doesn't really, the discount or the discriminatory pricing doesn't really matter to them, right?
Well, no. Again, let's not get too caught up on the lawnmower analogy. But in the lawnmower analogy, in the lawnmower story, the person with the lawnmower is not price sensitive. is the price sensitive customer? I'm sorry, that's the leisure customer. It seems like it seems like it seems like it should be the person who. But anyway, that person is in our world the leisure customer. They don't have to get a lawnmower, for God's sake. They don't need to go run to the store today.
Right.
You're trying to compel them to do so.
I don't have to go to Cancun.
Yeah,
I can,
precisely. I can go somewhere else. So anyway, that's what's happening. That's and again, in the airlines, it's so much bigger than just the $25.
Right.
And it's your entire pool of customers. So it's really, really important in the airline business is this concept of discriminatory pricing. And when airlines aren't able to get their customers to pay close to what they're willing to pay, or in this, I keep saying what customers are willing to pay. Economists call this your reservation price. What you as an individual consumer are willing to pay is your reservation price. That's where you'll stop. When you can't get customers to do that, that's what revenue management execs call dilution. And that primarily happens because you have these fences that are porous, that business customers can buy into the leisure fares, or competitive forces. You're trying to match some low-cost carrier. You're going to keep selling the low fare even though you're diluting yourself. But anyway, dilution is a really important concept. It's probably the most profit-reducing cost at an airline, but it never shows up on the P&L. That's because it's an opportunity cost. It's just the cost of what might have been. If you possibly could have collected, it's the difference between what was possible to collect versus what you actually collected, which is, in this case, consumer surplus. And revenue management leaders hate dilution, and they work really hard to minimize it. So I keep coming back to the same concept. You're just working really hard to figure out how to maximize, get people as close as you can to their reservation price, and not have them pay less than they're willing to. I remember vividly sitting, we're at American, and a group of investment bankers comes in, and they tell us, we just paid $149 a year from LaGuardia on 2 days' notice. We'd have paid a lot more than that, and it just makes your heart sink, As revenue management, I look over at the time again with Scott Kirby, and he's like, yeah, Spirit's in the market, and we're sitting on, this was back when we were matching all the Spirit fares, but enormous dilution. And again, as a revenue management analyst that you now are, you would just hate hearing things like that. What you want to hear is, God, you guys had that price right. I felt like it was a fair price, but it was what I was willing to pay. So anyway, so let's talk a little more about this. And again, this is going to get a little wonky, but I think it's important to me explaining all this. So, and I'll try and do it quickly. But when you go to the economics theory on this, the economy theory on this, there are 3 degrees of discriminatory pricing. First degree, perfect. That is, you charge each customer the absolute maximum they're willing to pay for a product. You eliminate the consumer surplus. Think of a skilled car salesman who negotiates different prices from individuals based on that salesman or saleswoman's ability to discern each customer's individual reservation price.
Yeah.
They're just good at it. And they know what you're willing to pay, and they figure it out, and they get you to pay what you're willing to pay. This by the way, is why my dad would dress like a bum and take off his watch anytime he went to buy a car.
Right. The great Bill Cosby, the Cosby Show. Not that we should cite Bill Cosby or whatever, but he was a doctor, and he would do that. He'd put on ratty old jeans and a torn up flannel short and all, and with his kid, and walk into the car dealership, and I'm struggling to buy a car or whatever, and then one of his patients would walk up and say, "Hey, Dr. Huxtable, how are you?" And it would ruin the whole thing. There's the salesman would say, "Doctor." Oh, okay.
Exactly. Okay, well, that's first degree price discrimination.
Yeah.
It's virtually impossible at scale. You got to know too much about your individual customers. But I will note, the expansion of AI has some people worried about that. And that's kind of what's come up with this Delta statement about AI. We can talk more about that if you'd like. It's not really what I'd be talking about in this class, but for what it's worth, I don't think that's what they're trying to do at all. But nonetheless, that's perfect price.
Yeah, no, the car salesman saying, "Oh, I need to see what zip code you live in, or so I'm going to charge you more." Yeah.
Okay, so that's perfect. Airlines are not going to get there. I don't think anybody's trying to get there, but we can talk about that as a trend. Second degree discrimination, price discrimination. This is when companies charge different prices based on the quantity or version of a product. So this allows the customer to self-select into separate tiers. So you can think of volume discounts. Corporations and airlines get discounts, commissions otherwise.
Right.
But they're still paying really high fares. But to try and get more than your share of them, you'll give them at certain corporations a discount, for example.
Right.
That happens in other businesses as well. Or you can think of product tiers, like Netflix Basic versus Netflix Standard. Do you want to watch commercials or not?
Right.
Or premium. And that happens in all sorts of businesses. And by the way, that's what's happening with basic economy.
Right.
Which is where this is all headed. And then the third degree of discrimination, and the lesser of the three, is companies price products differently based on the unique demographics or subsets of their customer base. So think senior discounts or student discounts, an entire group of people that you believe are more price sensitive, like seniors or students.
Right.
You give them all a discount because they're less likely to pay if you don't do that for them because they're price sensitive.
Yeah.
Or the lawnmower story.
Yeah.
Now, it's the least effective of the 3 degrees, largely because the groups are imperfect. I mean, Warren Buffett's a senior. He doesn't need a discount.
Right.
But he's going to take it if you give it to him.
Right.
So anyway, with that, understanding that, now let's go back with that theory to the reality of airlines. And at this point, I feel compelled to start distinguishing before basic economy and after basic economy, because it's that big a deal. So I may say, BB before basic and AB after basic as to how big a deal it is, but just know, but that's because it's truly transformative. So some of what I'm going to talk about is going to seem really strange to those that weren't around, before basic. But it's important to understand the evolution. So well before basic, as you know, back in the 1980s, as the airlines came out of a regulated pricing environment, they invested heavily in price discrimination tools and policies in an effort to maximize their revenues. And the primary area of discrimination we already talked about was between business customers and leisure customers. So a clear example of this discrimination, airlines led by American in the 80s developed these intricate pricing rules, things like 14-day advance purchases, requiring Saturday night stays, change fees, all sorts of things to identify, to separate, you're a business customer versus you're a leisure company.
Yes.
And also yield management systems to do whatever they could to continue attracting leisure customers, because you have to, they're 20-25% of your revenues, with low fares, but fencing business customers out.
Right.
Not just these fare rules.
Yeah.
Now yield management, which we'll talk about in a second. But we did that. We only had 2 products, First and Coach. That was all that was there. So you're trying to fence people off, but you're selling them. Once you sell the first class, which is outrageously priced.
It was not priced to sell.
Exactly.
I mean, that was,
Right.
It was really only one product.
I agree. But at least there were 2, there was an F and a Y.
Right.
Anyway, and at this point, again, because it's a 101 class, we should do a brief explanation of yield management. Because it's, I think, transparent to the average consumer, but it's important to the evolution story. And in short, yield management is the practice of having inventory buckets of increasing prices inside of airline distribution systems. It's different than pricing. There are prices, but the price is set, but there are differing buckets. And
there's 14 prices for the same flight.
Exactly. And what would happen is large airlines would match the lowest fares of some airlines, but only up to a point. They felt as though they were going to be able to sell enough higher price seats in the future that they no longer chose to sell those lower fares.
Yeah.
Now, in airline speak, they weren't raising the fare. They were closing the lower inventory buckets. And you hear them talk about that. But to the consumer, it doesn't make any difference. All the consumer sees is suddenly American's fare is higher than the low-cost carrier. And those other carriers would get Americans spill, what we call spill.
Right.
And those are basically customers that American, in this example, has chosen not to carry because they knew that higher yielding customers are coming, or they believed that leaving those fare buckets open would allow those that were coming to be able to pay the much lower fare than their reservation price. So they'd shut those buckets off. My point on this, the reason that's important, because this also was extremely complicated and data-driven. They spent a fortune on it. It was the way to do this in the existing computer reservations and GDS systems. And it was another tool in price discrimination, the way to maximize the revenue on the airplane. And they were good at it. So by the end of the 1990s, average business type fares were almost 7 times higher than leisure fares.
Yeah.
7 times.
Yeah.
For the same product.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a quick break to thank Infinity Flight Academy, the leader in Cadet Academy training programs, for helping us bring the podcast to you. Whether you're looking to build a custom pipeline or strengthen your existing cadet program, Infinity Flight Academy delivers consistent airline-ready results. And for those of you listening who've always dreamed of flying or know someone who has, Infinity Flight has trained thousands of students, many now flying for major airlines around the world. Learn more at infinityflight.com, Infinity Flight, where future airline pilots take off. In addition, thanks to Cirium. Cirium offers the most accurate and precise data and analytics to enable airlines to optimize planning, operations, and passenger services. The right intelligence drives operational efficiencies, enables you to predict market shifts, and helps airlines respond quickly to maximize revenue, manage costs, and seize commercial opportunity. Visit Cirium.com for more. Okay, back to our studies of one of the biggest challenges, if not the biggest challenge, facing the airline industry.
There were different generations of yield management systems. I mean, I remember when you'd start with, hey, the flight, and then there was the realization that, wait a minute, we're pricing that flight with 50 different connections. So we need to, how do we yield manage that? We're gonna have priority for the Dallas, New York customer, right, because we can also take an El Paso, Dallas customer, and that's 2 fares. Okay, how are we going to price El Paso, New York, and build that into the whole yield management equation?
Yeah, it was brilliant work. Which again, I think
it got very complicated.
Exactly, and really complicated. Ton of effort, really smart people.
Yeah,
intricate systems, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's important as we go forward because it's like, anyway, I'll get to that.
Yeah.
But look, the result of that was stories, and not just stories. I mean, this happened every day. Very unfortunate results in the cabin, such as business customers paying $1,500 and sitting in a middle seat in coach, and on the aisle and on the window, were people who had paid $200 each.
Right.
And they'd have these conversations with each other on the airplane. And so the $1,500 person, not only do they have this, they don't have the same product, they have a worse product.
Right.
And they've paid, 7, 8 times. And I know this sounds crazy now, probably to people that you're my age, but it was a business model for decades.
Yeah.
And the better the airlines got at it, the wider the disparities became. So the reason I want to stress why, how hard this was to develop and create is because as I've been thinking about this, I think it's worth asking a question that I keep asking myself as I've been putting this together. How come the people that were smart enough to build and develop these complex discrimination tools didn't ever decide to add at least a few simple and logical pricing add-ons, like an additional fee for a window seat in coach or for a seat closer to the front of the airplane?
Okay. Is that a question to me?
Do you want to answer that? I mean, it's fascinating. Think about all the effort and time that's going into this. Why in the world? And they know what they're doing. This is pure and simple price discrimination.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they?
Is it a limitation of the reservation system?
Thank you. I think that's the answer. Again, after talking to a couple of my...
there's only so much... there were... And I think that happens broadly. Like in your example with the $1,500 thing, one of the remedies was upgrades for people, right? But for decades, upgrades were not based on price you paid, but based on your loyalty level.
Right.
How much you flew, or how many miles you had accumulated, and I always wondered. So the $1,500 guy may well not get the upgrade, even though he or she may be the most deserving of that. And that was that just a blind spot, or was that also a technology shortcoming?
Good question. And again, that's why what I keep asking myself as I go through this. Was this kind of just legacy thinking? You couldn't break out of it? Or was it just impossible? And again, talking to a couple of friends of mine, I've come to believe, and it makes more sense, that they had discussions about this. I mean, Maya talks about how, having a conversation with, having a challenge from Mike Gunn, a long time ago.
Yeah.
An American, and half our listeners won't know who we're talking about, but he ran Americans marketing back in the 80s and 90s, where Gunn challenged the team with go figure out ways that we can get more from business customers. And of course, and how hard is it to come up with, and she's like, so of course we talked about, pay more for the window seat. But the problem was they couldn't do it with technology. They were working off old mainframe systems that many of them controlled by people outside their firm at the GDSs, who even if they could figure out how to program that quickly, that wasn't in their business model. So anyway, I think that's
most of your tickets were sold by agents, somebody else in other systems, right. and that's still an issue of
So anyway, we could spend a lot of time on this, and I know this is where listeners are probably screaming right now. No, I'll tell you what it was, and I don't know exactly. I'm just going to hand wave it as it's primarily technology. I think I think that hand wave is largely accurate. And maybe there was more. I'm not suggesting there wasn't somebody back in that time who had better ideas. But I think if they did, they'd have been told it was just unimplementable due to technology concerns.
Well, one road sign on that, I think a lot of that pricing creativity originated with discount carriers who weren't beholden to the mainframe systems, basically. Right. And so Ben Baldanza at Spirit was able to do it. He couldn't do it at US Air, but he probably could at Spirit.
Yep. Again, my student is well ahead of me. But yes.
Sorry.
No, that's right. No, but you're absolutely right. I mean, what happens is technology changes.
Right.
The internet comes. Websites are developed where you can put your own product. People buy directly from the airlines instead of through the GDSs. That stuff coming. But back then, when these people were doing these things, I don't think they had the ability to do much more than that. So within the constraints they had, they built this arcane system, did it really, really well, and it worked. The problem is it wasn't sustainable.
Yeah.
So in the early, you can't have a model where somebody's paying $1,500 for a middle seat and the other two people are paying $200. It's just not going to work forever. And it didn't. So what happened? The early 2000s, it became clear that model wasn't the product that people were looking for. And when events like 9/11, the dot-com bubble, rising fuel prices, increased LCC competition, all those things led to serial legacy airline bankruptcies, and opened the door to a lot more LCC growth, which eventually the traditional fences were just gone. So this world that the legacy airlines had created wasn't just transformed; it was gone. The yield management is still there. There's still efforts underway to charge different, but the Saturday night stays are gone. 14-day events purchases are gone. The real tools that were used to separate are gone, and this disparity went away. There's still a disparity, of course, but it's 2 or 3 times, not 7 or 8 times.
I think it's worth saying too, with all of those crazy rules and penalties and fences that were in place. There were a whole lot of travelers who gamed the system. And it was, you would buy back-to-back tickets because you could get around the Saturday night stay for multiple trips to New York or whatever. You would, there's still a little bit of, this whole skip lagging thing, which is a new name for an old technique of, hey, if it's cheaper to go to El Paso, I'm just going to buy a ticket to El Paso, but I'll get off the plane in Dallas because that's where I really want to go. So that all, it just angered customers.
Absolutely.
It made buying an airline ticket an unpleasant thing, a difficult thing.
Absolutely. It didn't feel fair.
Yeah, yeah.
And because it didn't feel fair, everyone felt perfectly fine with going and figuring out ways to break through the rules.
Sure.
It goes away. And then we move into this period beyond that, this really not very pleasant period, through the Great Recession and the growth of the ULCCs, of debundling. You'll remember all that. I'm again not going to spend a ton of time on it, but the important point about this debundling thing is that the ULCCs took it to a new level.
Yeah.
The ULCCs, and you mentioned Ben, they were doing things that early on maybe none of us thought was possible, but they were all things that the large airlines included in their base fares, like carry-on bags, assigned seats, drinks. They were all extras to the base fare at Spirit.
Right.
So the large airlines, for a long time, tried to post fares that looked like they matched Spirit's kind of what they called getting on the plane fare. So Spirit would have a fare of $49, but you got to pay for a bag. You got to pay for a carry-on, for God's sake. So someone else would post a fare that adds $49 and the cost of whatever they're charging for the bag, et cetera. And they post a fare that felt like, at least to them, like, okay, that's what you're really paying as a consumer, and we're matching their fare.
Yeah.
But the GDS systems would only show the base fare. So as a consumer, what you would see is that, and 20 to 25% of customers again would see the lowest fare is on Spirit.
Right.
Huge problem.
Yeah.
For the large airlines.
Yeah.
Not only do they have to match this fare that Spirit isn't really charging, because they're charging add-ons to that the other airlines don't have.
Yeah.
But if you try and match what their true fare is, you lose 20-25% of your revenues.
Because you're going to be way down in the display.
Because you're going to be so far down the display. And again, maybe it's not 20-25% because Spirit's not that big yet, but it just fuels their growth.
Yeah.
Because they have this best share shift thing in the world, a fare advantage. And airlines can't allow that. So, things, again, I'll skip kind of the history that you and I might find fun talking about. American actually tried to match the base fare. We got, and did. And I think it was effective against Spirit, but it was not effective. Wall Street didn't like it. Other airlines didn't like it. But as that's going on, Delta is working on basic economy. And I believe this Spirit, fare advantage is what led Delta to begin developing basic economy fares. They were doing it back in 2012. Now, I got to say I believe, because I wasn't there, and I can't speak for certain as to what they're thinking about. Maybe we should bring Glenn Howenstein onto the show, and he can ask him to tell us about the story of this transformational event. But
absolutely.
Yeah. And maybe he's going to tell us, oh no, we realized all along that this was a transformational product. And, if it wouldn't just restore price discrimination to the airline industry, but it would improve price discrimination from an unfair and unsustainable third degree model to a much more efficient, customer friendly and sustainable second degree model. But I don't think that's what he'd say.
Yeah.
Because we know at least that internally Delta referred to basic back then, early on, as a Spirit match strategy.
Yeah.
That's what they called it internally. And they initially only placed it in Spirit markets. I just think this is really interesting because, what I'm talking about is this transformational event. I don't think even they realized at the time how transformational it was.
Right.
But only when they saw it in place did they see what happened. So they have it only in Spirit markets. By early 2015, 2 or 3 years later, they only had basic economy on 75 routes. And all those had LCC competition.
Yeah.
But by 2016, just 1 year later, they expanded basic economy across the entire domestic network.
Right.
So it only seems logical that as they rolled out what was a defensive tool, they came to realize it was an enormous offensive tool. That it was actually the basis for a much more profitable airline pricing structure and a transformational one. So United American added basic economy in early 2017. By that time, I was at American, and it was pitched to us as both a great defensive tool for ULCCs. Primarily, that was the pitch.
Yeah.
But also as a potentially transformational tool for maximizing revenues because of the tiers above basic economy.
So it becomes the discount for the lawnmower of sorts.
It becomes the base of which you can add things onto. In reality, what it comes is basic. It's basic Netflix. It's commercials.
Right.
You want to sit, you don't care about your time. You're willing to just, all you want to do is see the show. We're going to give you this. But again, huge difference. Basic Netflix, doesn't have the price disparity we do. But yeah, that's what it is. Basic economy is, here's the bare bones Spirit product.
We'll get you to Cleveland.
And we should, and again, for our 101 students, we should make sure everybody's clear about this. Back then, basic economy is the bare bone products get you a seat on the airplane, but depending on your airline, offers very little else. No seat assignment until check-in. Last ones to board. Limited, if any, frequent flyer miles accrual, baggage limitations, no changeability, et cetera, et cetera. All just a bare bones, going to get, as you say, get you to Cleveland.
Right. No, and it was, I remember thinking at the time, it was a strategy of saying, okay, here's the bottom fare, but we don't want you to buy it. We are going to make this so distasteful that we want you to spend more and buy up. Now, for some people, the opportunity to buy that cheapest price, that's exactly what they want. And for others, and I think we've seen this in so many other consumer areas. You mentioned Netflix and everywhere else, right? Consumers actually like the opportunity to buy up to their comfort level.
Exactly. I would just restate a little bit what you said and say, it's not that they didn't want you to buy it. Maybe they didn't want you to buy it.
Yeah.
We wanted 20 to 25% of our customers to buy it because we knew that's what they care about.
Yeah.
But if that's all you care about, here it is. Who you didn't want to buy it was the other 75 to 80% of your customers.
Right.
Who were willing to pay more. And that was the classic problem airlines had, and here was a solution to that.
Yeah.
And this willing to pay more, all of a sudden, I think as Delta in particular saw what was happening, they realized, oh my goodness, we have people willing to pay premiums that we were never offering the ability to pay a premium.
Yeah.
And when we offer that ability, what do you know? They're out there, number one, and two, oh my God, we need to get more of this product onto the airplane. They're willing to pay for more. They are willing to pay for more legroom. They're willing to pay for basic economy, or for premium economy. So I need more premium economy seats. So because that's what they see it happening as in the real world as they have the product being priced, and therefore they which I think is a key point of all of this, and you're leading me there, which is much of the narrative is airlines like Delta went and bet on the product. They went and put a good product out there, hoping that they would steal share from other airlines and get business customers to fly them versus other airlines.
Yeah.
Maybe some of that happens. Certainly, if you're the first one, that'll happen. But what I believe the real story on this is, and what they understand is, even if we lose the share shift back, this is the right way to price discriminate. This is the right way to maximize the revenue on the airplane, because I'm allowing the customer to choose a product at a premium that they're choosing to pay. They're happy because they're paying it. We're happy because what they're paying gives us more than it costs us to provide that service.
Yeah.
And this is a win-win. And that's what's happened.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because we've seen Delta brag on earnings calls about the growth of basic economy, right? And, hey, we're 25% more basic economy tickets or whatever, and that's part of it. And I think this was not to get ahead, but it's not just the product on the airplane. The basic economy, if you believe it brings in new customers or customers who aren't in your loyalty program, becomes an opportunity to get them into the loyalty program. And then if you get them into the loyalty program, maybe they'll get your credit card, and maybe, so you can make money off of a customer in other ways other than just getting them to buy an extra legroom seat.
Yep. All right, you're there, I'm there. Look, it's brilliant and it's transformative. Again, it takes away the price advantage and therefore much of the spill from the ULCCs. And in most cases, the large airlines don't need to close down the basic economy price bucket and give the ULCC the price advantage anymore.
Yeah.
That basic economy product is unacceptable to their less price sensitive customers. So I'm not saying there aren't times that they might close down or raise the basic economy fare above where Spirit might be. But in general, they're willing to leave it there, matching Spirit fares or Frontier fares in this case, because that is not a product that's going to dilute them
Right.
Because people like you and others aren't going to pay it. And certainly business people, their businessman. The other thing we found right away is, by the way, most corporate clients said, please figure out a way to not show me that fare.
Right.
Because I don't want my clients screwing up and buying that, because they're going to be really upset. It was happening.
Yeah.
They were buying it and getting really upset about the product
Right.
that their company had put them on.
Right.
So they suppress it. They don't even show it
Yeah.
at corporations, at many corporations. So anyway, it's
Right.
brilliant in that regard.
Yeah. And not just matching the fare, but also matching the product.
Yeah.
Right. Which is
it's a better product, for God's sakes. You're on a
you're on a seat, but if you're gonna, if you're gonna pay for, I don't know what, pay for a seat assignment, right? That's how you match Spirit's lack of, or Spirit's seat assignment fee.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, and then like we said, as you do that, a funny thing happens. You find customers are indeed willing to pay more for the product.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems so logical now, I know. But again, when you go, that's why I think this history is important. We
Right.
couldn't do it, but before we go through all this turmoil, we go through this debundling, which actually kind of takes away from the customer. It
Yeah.
says you got to pay more for what you used to pay for, if you want these small things. But it turns into something that says, no, okay, here's the bare bones, and now here are things that add on, and the add-ons people are willing to pay for, and they're willing to pay a good bit for it. And when they do that, you realize you need more. So look, I don't think that Delta has necessarily attracted more premium customers by betting that premium customers would come to the enhanced product on share shift. Again, they may have gotten share shift because they were first mover, but I think they fully understand that this, like other product enhancements, if it works, the other airlines are going to follow, and that's what's happening.
Right.
But they've learned their customers are more than willing to pay a premium for the enhanced product, that more than covers the cost of the product, so they keep putting more in. So in essence, I don't think the industry is necessarily attracting more premium customers than it used to.
Right.
I think the industry has figured out how to offer those exact same customers an opportunity to pay premiums that never existed before 2017. That never existed before basic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some airlines are ahead of others in that process, but they're all headed there because it's the best way to eliminate costly revenue dilution, and it's the best way to maximize revenues on each and every flight. It's revenue management.
Yeah.
Pure and simple. So anyway, I'm coming kind of to the end of this. So if I'm a student or even a customer, I might say, well, who cares? What difference does it make if these airlines improve their products and that led to higher pricing, or if they change their pricing model and that's leading to a better product? We end up in the same place as a customer. We have better product in place, and I get to choose to pay. Who cares who's
chicken
right?
and egg.
Yeah, exactly. To which I'd say, no, it does matter. The shift's important because it's real and sustainable. This is a model that makes sense. Airlines work so hard for 20 years to come up with this, price discrimination model, this third degree model, which worked. It absolutely worked. It was just unsustainable because the gap was so big that you invited low-cost competition in. So it works on the natural share. They don't need to steal share for it to work. Of course, they're going to try to keep stealing share. That's what airlines do. It's even better if you can steal share. But to the extent they steal share, that's additional profits. But it also means the other airlines are going to try and steal it back. And it's good for the consumer because they get to choose which products they want to pay for, much unlike the prior models. So I'm not suggesting, that there won't be tough times for airlines in the future and that there won't be tough revenue environments. But I don't think this pricing structure will change. I just think the prices for each of these products will be lower in that case. I think this is a real and sustainable because it's so logical and so perfect for what airlines need to do. Discriminate amongst some very, very large disparities between their customers and what they're willing to pay on the same airplane. And it gives them the ability to do that while matching the ULCC. So I think it's here for the long term. And I think that has real implications for the industry in terms of things like ULCC competition, relative price offerings, frequent flyer programs, customer satisfaction. I think that's why I'm saying it's the second most transformative thing.
Yeah.
Let's pause a moment because we also want to thank Ontario International Airport for its support. Ontario International Airport is celebrating a decade of local control. Thanks to public support, the local community reclaimed ONT, revived it as a vital gateway in Southern California, and ensured the airport is ready to soar even higher in the years to come. Visit flyontario.com/10 to learn the story and find out how you can join the year-long celebration of how a decade of local control has turned ONT into one of California's fastest growing and most economical airports. And finally, thanks to Pratt & Whitney. At Pratt & Whitney, the pursuit of more sustainable aviation is foundational. For decades, Pratt & Whitney has been at the forefront of revolutionary advancements in aircraft propulsion technology. And by working smarter, cleaner, and greener today, they are committed to supporting the aviation industry in its goal of reaching net zero CO2 emissions by 2050. Learn more about Pratt & Whitney's smarter technology, cleaner fuel, and greener business at prattwhitney.com.
Promotional support provided by the Ultimate AvGeek website, thearchive.net. A vast collection of airline memorabilia, timetables, route maps, rare cabin and airport photos, special flights, and more. All at thearchive.net, the hub of air transport history.
Okay, Professor, continue.
Do you think that this industry has had continual evolution? Do you think that some other model or answer or response is out there to be evolved? And I say that because it seems to me the ULCCs are at a point now where, it's your serve. You got to come up with something new, right, to respond to basic economy.
Yeah. Let's go. The answer is, of course, it can be evolution. Let's go through. To try and answer that. Let's try and go through these questions, okay?
Okay.
That we started with.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
See if we can answer those questions that we posed that we'd be able to answer at the end of this.
Okay.
Because I think that'll address. And if it doesn't, we'll come back to your question.
Okay.
All right. So first question was, how come more room in coach was a strategic failure, but products like premium economy and main cabin extra are rousing successes?
Because more room throughout coach you gave away for free. It didn't. Extra legroom seating becomes something you can charge extra for, and more room throughout coach. To me, that was at a different time too. It was when an airline seat was much more of a commodity, and it was hard to move share, right? As you've told us. The theory was Americans said, hey, we're going to give everybody extra legroom, so they won't fly United, they'll fly us. And people said, no, for especially if the price is cheaper somewhere else, I don't care.
Well done.
Okay.
I mean, that's it. They were looking to shift share at a time that they couldn't monetize. And they tried to monetize, but it didn't work.
Yeah.
They still had, because of the pricing system was in place, they still had to match. They couldn't afford to lose 20 to 25% of their customers.
Right.
So they still had to match the lowest fare in the market. So those people were paying the lowest fare in the market and all of a sudden just getting more space. By the way, if anyone doesn't know what more room coach is, American talked about like 2 rows of seats back in the early 2000s. I think in
2 or 3, yeah.
2 or 3 rows.
6'5" Don Carty said.
Like 6% of their seats in coach they removed.
Yeah.
In an effort to get more business customers or more people to pay more.
Right.
In like 2000. So that product, obviously a huge product enhancement, did not work. They still, because all that was happening now is their prices were largely the same because of competitive forces. They had to match the low fares. So those 25% of people that just paid the lowest fare now just happen to have, 4 more inches of legroom and they're happy. And the business customers who are paying these enormous prices back then, they're not going to pay even a more enormous price to be an American.
Right.
You've got to actually, what they're counting on is what you said. They're counting on the people that pay really high fares at United to now choose to fly American instead. And there might have been some of that, but there sure wasn't enough.
Right.
Because it's really hard to do.
Right.
Like I said, it's just really hard to get people to shift because what those people care about the most is, who's going to get me there the fastest. And that's the natural share. So you're trying to move someone off their natural share into your product. Again, more room and coach absolutely had to do some of that. There's no doubt. It's a huge product names, and they advertised the hell out of it. So I know it had to do some of that, but it clearly wasn't enough because it was gone within 2 years. And
there was a downturn.
I know, but nonetheless, it wasn't going to work in that pricing environment. My point, and indeed, unfortunately, probably for customers, that was like what airlines look to for another decade is, well, that's why we don't do these things.
Yeah.
Look at more room and coach. Look at what American tried, and it obviously didn't work. Putting caviar and coach isn't going to work either.
Right.
It's either going to increase our costs and not move share, or it's not going to move share. It's just we shouldn't do those things, and that's when we get to all this debate.
It was also, by the way, I think this is relevant, was at a time when standard seat pitch was not as cramped as it is now.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I know.
So, right. So if you had already squeezed down to 29, 28, 30-inch seat pitch, more room throughout coach might have been a whole lot more attractive than if, hey, wait a minute, I'm getting 32, 33. Do I really care if it's 34 or 35? I mean,
anyway, at the end of the day, I think it was an effort to move share, which is really hard, and it wasn't, an ability. They didn't monetize. They weren't able to monetize because of the pricing structure.
Yeah. Okay.
So what's the next one here?
Why are some executives who once argued against product enhancement in the airline business suddenly product advocates? Have they changed?
Okay. No, they haven't changed. Those individuals, and again, it's unfair to if I was still in the business, I'd be one of these people who would look as though I've changed.
Right, but this was a discussion we had recently with Scott Kirby.
Fair enough. I'm trying to leave Scott out of it. It's not fair to him.
Yeah.
This is true, I think, of anyone who was in the industry in 2009 and was talking about, hey, we can't put more product in the airplane because I can't get paid for it, and who now is in the business and is saying, I'm going to pull out more product in the airplane, and people are saying, gosh, what happened to that individual? So, you asked Scott. Well, anyway, I was trying to leave Scott out of it. But it would be true of anyone. He happens to be one of the very few people who was, had a high enough position in 2009 that he was being quoted on this. And now he has a high enough position in 2025 that he's still being quoted on it.
Yeah.
But the answer, I think, is individuals, someone like me, if I was still working, or Scott in this example, they haven't changed. I mean, again, on this point, they haven't changed the way they think about the business. What's changed is the way to maximize profit. In 2009, the way to maximize profit was not to put a bunch more product on the airplane because you couldn't get it monetized.
Yeah.
But now, with the advent of basic economy, it is. So that's what I think.
Yeah. I do think, and this part, I've always thought the airline industry was the place where new pricing strategies would get developed, where new pricing strategies went to die, where they succeeded. But the challenges in this business are so much more that you get a lot of innovation out of this, right? A lot of other industries now do yield management, right? But it started with airlines. And so this idea, I mean, I do think the consumer has changed in terms of willingness to pay more for add-ons and all. And there's a bit of a chicken egg thing. Did that start, because airlines started baggage fees, right? And now that concept has migrated to other industries. But I also think there's, and this is what's going on at Southwest right now, maybe, where there is much more consumer acceptance of, they're going to charge a fee for me to check my bag, or a fee for this, or a fee for that, or whatever.
Yeah. No, I agree. And again, I think the reason airlines are so innovative, as you say, on this is because it's just so much more important to us because of this disparity within our customers, which isn't going to go away. I mean, again, this is we all always get over time this. Why do you even match these fares? Again, I told you it's 20-25%.
Yeah.
Another point is, why don't we just have an airline that only is for business customers? Lord knows that business model's been tried a million times.
Right. That never works.
Those don't work.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think this disparity that airlines have in their customers is what drives all that innovation.
And always the great question of who's subsidizing who, right? Is the leisure passenger subsidizing lower business fares, or is the business customer allowing leisure people to fly on cheap fares?
Yeah. Whatever the case is, they're not paying enough for the airlines to be wildly profitable.
Right.
And the airlines are working very, very hard to maximize that revenue. Okay, let's combine the next two because they're similar. What happened to the spill carrier model? What's the future of the ULCC model? You kind of asked me this, so I'll try and answer it there. Can the ULCCs innovate? Look, my view is the spill carrier model is seriously harmed by the basic economy product. That is not necessarily dilutive, as we already talked about. So it's much less likely to be closed out. So it's much less likely that those airlines, that a consumer is going to go online and find those airplanes have a fair advantage versus the other airlines. And that's what spill is. And so I think that model, if you're living off that model, which those airlines were, you got to figure out something else.
That's interesting. Do you think the internet is what really changed that? Or, the internet gives you perfect pricing information, right?
Perfect pricing information all through the 2010s, and it worked just fine.
Yeah.
I think basic economy changed it.
Yeah.
Back then, airlines, we matched the fare for a while, then we'd turn it off. Then you'd get spilled. Or you'd not want to match Spirit's lowest fare because it didn't include all their add-ons. And you would look to the customer like the lowest fare was on Spirit, and they'd get that's not spill, that's a price advantage.
Yeah.
But anyway, for those same reasons, that's what happened before. Those things aren't happening anymore because of basic economy, and that's a huge deal to these carriers. So when you ask, can they be more innovative? Can they figure out things? I don't think they can figure out a way. I don't know how they can figure out a way to just all of a sudden have a price advantage. But I don't think the airlines are giving a price advantage anymore.
Right.
They have to go back. They have to figure out a way to have a cost advantage, a way to live off the revenues, their natural share of revenues, not more than their natural share because of spill. Their natural share of revenues at those price levels has to be profitable.
Yeah.
And the way to do that is have a cost structure that matches that. And they've unfortunately gotten themselves, I think, in trouble on both fronts.
Right.
So look, they're challenged. I'm not going to predict that they're going out of business or anything, but their business model is, you can see it in their financials, you can see it in their growth prospects. It's much harder to have a price advantage. You've got to have lower costs now than the airline. And Richard Anderson mentioned this on our call. He's like, wow, the big airlines are opening the door to possible cost advantages with, things like new labor contracts, at least in his view. And we've seen that in the past. So maybe that kind of happens, but I don't think it's with the existing LCCs or ULCCs because they've kind of gotten their cost up to there. So maybe there's, but I think what more like we'll see is new entrants come in who have really, truly, truly low costs again, and they grow fast. So you might see more and more of that kind of repeat itself. But I don't know, if you're at a ULCC, you got to figure out a way to get your costs into a range that allows you to be profitable at your natural share levels.
And I'm just curious because I think it's a mistake for them to be matching sort of a big airline model, right? Putting in first class seats, taking out seats for extra legroom rows and stuff. Those things are going to raise your costs, your unit costs. And I just can't see consumers saying, oh yeah, I'm going to, Frontier first class, that's for me. I don't know.
I don't know either. I really don't. I mean, the counter argument to that is, look, that's what happened at the legacy carriers. They didn't have premium economy, and then once through basic economy fares, they figured out, I can sell these seats for a lot more than they cost me to take out a row of seats.
Yeah.
Then it works. So maybe that's still an optimal model for them. I don't think it's not going to be as good as what the large airlines have with the same model. There's no doubt about that because they don't have the scale.
Yeah.
That model is contingent upon having a schedule that gives you a natural share that is sustainable, and I don't know that they have that, but it may be better than what they're doing now. So it's hard for me to argue. I don't know, but I'm with you on the questioning it.
Yeah.
Okay, the next question on here was, what benefits should frequent flyers expect going forward? Now, we haven't even mentioned frequent flyers yet. We could spend a whole other class on that and what might happen there.
Yeah.
This one I think is really interesting because, and you've mentioned it a little bit, what's happening now is airlines are, as they've recognized the value of monetizing these seats, they've stopped giving away as many free things to their frequent flyers.
Right.
Frequent flyers, I imagine. So I can remember when I was back when I was an American, and Delta was touting what their paid first class load factor was, and it was higher than ours. I was asking our team, why, how come they can do this when we can't? And the answer I got back was, well, they're calling it paid first class, but these people aren't paying full fare first. They're not paying full F. They're, taking Y passengers and selling upgrades to them, and so they're only getting an extra $200, to which the point is, well, who cares? That's better than
it's an extra
$200. in this work where $200 makes a huge difference.
Yeah, no.
And again, people at American are working on it, but that was the point. And it was like some sort of revolutionary thing. And quickly, what was said was, we got to be really careful about this, though, because we're going to alienate our frequent flyers who are used to getting that as a free upgrade. And that they're really important, of course, because our credit cards, generate billions of dollars of revenues for people wanting to use their frequent flyer miles or points. So we got to be very careful about it. Well, fast forward to where, I don't know how, just a couple of earnings calls, I just saw a quote from Glenn Howenstein again, where he's bragging about the fact that they have, I think, again, I don't want to misquote, but what I think I read was bragging about the fact that they have virtually no free upgrades anymore.
Right.
That they're almost 100% paid first, if you will. Again, not paying full fare first, but they don't seem to be losing any sort of frequent flyer share from their Amex card. It seems to be doing really, really well. The numbers keep going up. So they've figured out a way to do this in a way that I'm sure their frequent flyers aren't particularly happy about, but nonetheless, they're okay. I think the new rule is, look, we love our frequent flyers. If you want to upgrade, go buy the not basic economy, go buy the fare just above basic economy. And you get a free upgrade into premium economy or main cabin extra.
Right.
That's your upgrade.
Right.
That, by the way, maybe if this is the trend we should talk about, I think over time you may see that begin to try and be monetized, but we're a long way away from that. But that's what looks like happening. But what these airlines are realizing is we can get a lot of money from monetizing, and we love our frequent flyers. Of course, we value the fact that you've done that. But if you want to move from the cabin you're in into another cabin, just give us more miles.
Yeah.
Use the points you've earned to pay for those, and that's. That's what I think the trend is, and I don't want to get frequent flyers kind of up in arms. Oh my God, what's going to happen? I think this is if it happens, it's going to be a gradual shift. But it's clearly what's happened with the first class cabin. So I think it's logical to assume that airlines will keep figuring out ways to do this, and that things that once were free, and again, people take exception to that. It's not free. The people earned it by earning their miles. But things that were once given then to those who were elite customers may require you to pay with more miles in the future. And
so the question is, can you replace the benefits? I mean, what's happened with with elite levels of programs is, I think, the benefits have been replaced. You mentioned one, the upgrade to extra legroom instead of first class. But I get that universally. I'm actually okay with that. I infrequently get a first class upgrade. I'm fine if I get extra legroom. Boarding has become such a mess that I want my status in the frequent flyer program just so I get an early boarding group.
Right.
I mean, that's or the benefit is reaccommodation and disruption, or a special phone number to call, or there are things. I think the incentives for people achieving high levels of elite recognition in the program, that's changed, and the airlines have really kind of done a brilliant job at convincing people that high levels of status are still worth something.
Well, yeah, they almost feel like they're worth more. It's just because it's like it's status. So anyway, being able to board first, I'm with you, is a huge advantage. All I'm suggesting, and again, I'm suggesting, I don't want to alarm anybody, but those things can be monetized over time. Right now, they've chosen to monetize the upgraded first class. And not only have they chosen to do it, they're doing it and bragging about it. Again, that's just so, to me, so telling about what's happening.
Yeah.
That never would have happened when I was working. If I would have said, I'm going to go on the call and tell our frequent flyers that we're not giving any more free upgrades, our marketing people would have gone crazy at me, and we wouldn't have done it, frankly, for that reason. But now it's okay. So that's great. That's, again, I don't want to offend anybody and say it's great news. It's good news for the airlines. It's good news for the customers as long as you understand it. It doesn't mean you can't get into first class as a frequent flyer. It just means if you want to be into first, if that's really important to you.
Not always good news. There's an interesting thing going on right now at Southwest where A-list preferred people are apparently very happy with the changes that are coming, but A-list people are unhappy. And one of the issues is, when do they get to reserve an extra legroom seat? And they're low in the process, right? So, it's 48 hours. It's not at the time of booking. And so it's possible that all the seats will already be taken. Or if you change flights, you're not guaranteed an extra legroom seat. So in a sense, their benefits are being diluted, and they're not happy about it. And it's going to be interesting to see if Southwest can get away with that in a sense, or if they need to sweeten the pot.
Yeah, thanks. But again, that's exactly the kind of stuff I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But again, I just, as an observer now, I have nothing to do with this, if this happens or not, but observing this, it feels like those types of things are exactly what you're going to see.
Yeah.
That the bigger airlines, you're going to see, okay, what used to be an automatic, at time of purchase upgrade for you based on your status, well, now it's going to be 48 hours in advance.
Right.
And by the time you get to 48 hours in advance, you may not be able to do this. So if you want to get it now, give us some more miles.
No, and the pressure is, if I really want that, I'm just going to go ahead and buy it, even though I could get it 48 hours in advance.
Okay, and again, I know I can just tell them saying this out loud. This is going to be alarmist if I make it sound. No, to my knowledge, I don't know anybody working on this.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is going to happen soon. I just think this is a gradual and rational result of where we end up, but it's going to be tempered very much by the fact that the credit card programs are so valuable that you can't keep asking people to give you 2 cents a mile for something that isn't worth 2 cents a mile. So they're going to figure out, they'll balance that. But it's anyway, I think you will see a movement toward, trying to monetize more of those types of issues. Okay, look at our last one here. How will the product models of the big three compare to each other in the future? My answer to that is they're going to be really similar. Because that model is the way to maximize the revenue and natural share. And because allowing any loss of natural share to the product is a lot more expensive than matching that product enhancement. So, I think this is the new model. I think it's the right model for legacy airlines. And I think what you're going to see them all move to this product. I think you're seeing it happen today. Not just this product, but these product enhancements that allow the customer to choose between whether they want to pay more for a better product or not, and that's going to result in a better product in all the airlines. Yeah.
So that begs the question a little bit of 2 big premium airlines or 3 big premium airlines, because Scott Kirby's been saying they're only going to be 2.
Okay, Scott. I, as I always do, listen to your show, and I listen to Scott, and I thought he did a great job as always. That one though. So I'm happy to comment. And what I think is, what I'll always say before I comment about anything Scott says is, look, I think Scott's great. He was part of our team for 20 years. It's a big part of what we accomplished together. He's one of the best airline executives I ever worked with. But because I know him so well, I also know his BS. And there will only be 2 global premium carriers is complete and total BS. And I think he knows, there are 3 such airlines and always will be, certainly for the foreseeable future. American, look, they're still struggling to regain share they gave up over a year ago through a flawed distribution strategy. That was self-inflicted, and they've talked about it. They've talked about what they're doing about it. That's what, like I say, self-inflicted, they're working through that. But that doesn't change who they are. American's a global U.S. network carrier with one of the most valuable networks in the world. And as we've now discussed over a long time, the way to maximize profits of an airline like that is to monetize the enormous demand that exists for premium products. And that's what American's working to do.
Yeah.
I flew, because of my Qantas board membership, I flew flagship first on American from DFW to Brisbane recently. It's as nice as anything in the sky. Certainly in first in business, pods, door closes, it's fantastic product. They have A321 XLRs being delivered with 155 seats. 155 seats on an A321.
Instead of 220.
They're flying around now, exactly. Because it's just hugely skewed to premium.
Yeah.
Now, those are decisions that they made in the last few months in response, or even since their debacle, in response to people telling them, "Oh, you got to improve your product." You had to make those decisions years ago.
Yeah.
And they did, because they were already seeing, as Delta and United is now seeing, significant and sustainable premiums that those products can generate for their shareholders for global premium airlines. So anyway, I just think, as a check on this, suppose Robert Ison's hit by a bus and the American board asks Scott to return as its CEO. That's not going to happen, of course. Neither of those things are going to happen, but stick with me. Do you think Scott's message to his team and his customers at his new airline, American, is going to be, we're too late. There's only room for 2 global U.S. premium airlines. Those spots are taken, so we're going to just be this distant third carrier picking up their spill? Of course not.
Yeah.
I mean, it's laughable. And and of course he wouldn't. That's not who he is, and it's also not the right answer. And he knows that. He'd say, he's there to get American share of global premium traffic and more back to AA through restoring faith with the business travel community and by putting out a product that's good or better than Delta or United's. He'd say exactly what Robert Ison's saying because that's the right answer. And that is where they're headed. So look, I think I don't know. Maybe he just finds it a provocative statement, and I guess it is because it got me to say this. But in a world where people can just say whatever they want without basis in fact, and just hope that in doing so it might come true, which is an unfortunate world we've gotten to. Maybe he thinks it's a good thing to say to his team and his shareholders because it helps people maybe believe that to be true. But it's ridiculous, and he knows it. And he's smarter and he has better strategic perspective than that statement indicates.
Yeah. Well, he's being provocative. He's provoking. He's, I think he has an interest in dissing his former employer, and it is interesting. But it does.
I just want to go back to. I think Scott's great.
Yeah,
I'm not upset about this. I just think again, like I say, I know him well enough to know when it's just BS, and that's what this is. And like I said, I think he knows it. And anyway,
right. But it is
out of defense that they probably don't need of my old friends. It's just when I heard that part, I was like, oh, come on. So anyway, thanks for asking.
No, I just think it's fascinating. I mean, there is a motivating the workforce element to it, right? And there is in competitive markets in Chicago, trying to say to customers, we're the one, not them. Yeah. I think American needs a stronger public response. But that's a whole nother.
I don't have a view on that. I'm not there. Anyway, what I know is that comment is without basis.
Yeah.
So look, class is. Here's my summary of the class.
Yes, Professor.
Basic economy pricing and the sell-up pricing that came with it is the second most transformative event in the airline industry since deregulation.
Yeah.
It finally created a tool for larger airlines to match the fares of the LCCs and the ULCCs without seriously diluting their revenues. And it gave them a mechanism to monetize their product attributes. And they're finding enormous demand from customers who are willing to pay a premium for those attributes. It's transformational, and it's with us to stay, and it's a really good thing.
And with us to stay even through the next big recession.
Yeah, I think, I'm not suggesting that there won't be bad times, but I think the structure stays in place because it's so logical. And again, there'll certainly be enhancements and revisions to it. But the structure of here's your bare bones fare and here are your premiums on top that you can pay for products you may or may not choose to pay for. Yeah. That structure is in place to stay. I think that's going to result in a better product. It's going to result in ability for large airlines to compete better with smaller, low-cost airlines. And it's here to stay. It may be at lower fare levels, maybe at higher fare levels. But it's a huge difference from what we had from the time I joined the business in 1986 up until I left in 2022. And it's transformational.
Well, Professor, you're hired.
All right. Yes.
Doug, this has really been incredible. Really wonderful. Really appreciate all the preparation, all the thought, everything that went into this. I do think it. I think it'll help everybody in the industry understand the business more, but also understand how transformative the changes that we've seen the last couple of years really are. So deep appreciation. for all you've put into this. And thank you.
All right. Well, thank you.
All right. So that's all for this week. We will be back next week with more on Airlines Confidential. Thanks for listening, everyone. Take care.
This podcast is produced by Mass Media. Info@massmedia.net.